1. Let me tell you about this interesting 1965 Dodge A100 I found on Facebook Marketplace for $10,000. This classic van has covered 54,121 miles over its lifetime, and while the seller is pretty firm on the price, there's some interesting stuff to unpack here. The color combination is definitely unique. You're looking at a blue exterior paired with a pink interior, which isn't something you see every day. It's powered by the reliable 225 cubic inch engine, that's the Slant 6, paired with a manual transmission, not automatic as initially listed. The seller's description clarifies this. Being honest here, while it's listed in very good condition, the seller admits it needs a bit more to be a daily, so you should factor that into your considerations. However, they do mention that the running gear is super, which is a positive point. The van comes with a clean title and reportedly has no significant damage or problems. These A100s are becoming increasingly collectible, and finding one that's actually running is getting harder. At $10,000, considering current market values for A100s, it's worth checking out if you're into these unique forward control vans. Just keep in mind, you'll need to invest some additional work to make it a daily driver. The seller seems pretty straightforward. They're not interested in negotiating and might even pull the listing before reducing the price. If you're interested, you'll want to act quickly and be prepared to pay the asking price. 2. Let's talk about this 1981 Ford F-150 I spotted on Facebook Marketplace for $2,000. I'm going to be straight with you about what we're looking at here. This old workhorse is being pretty honestly presented by the seller. It's a two-wheel drive F-150 with a beige-on-beige color combo that's showing its age. While it has a clean title and the seller notes it's had 2 owners, let's be real about its condition. This is essentially a parts truck, and the seller is upfront about that. The interesting part is it has a replacement engine with around 100,000 miles, which is actually a positive point. Yes, it runs and drives, which is always good news for a truck of this age, but there are some issues you should know about. There's rust present, pretty common for these old Fords, and the tailgate is stuck shut, which tells us there might be other mechanical issues lurking. At $2,000, and with the seller willing to negotiate down, this could be a decent deal if you're either looking for a project truck or need parts for another F-150 of this era. Just don't go into this expecting a daily driver without putting in some serious work. These old F-150s are generally pretty solid trucks with good parts availability, but this one's definitely showing its 40+ years of age. Remember, when the seller is openly calling it a parts truck, that's exactly what you should expect. But hey, for the right person, this could be a goldmine of useful parts or a fun restoration project if you're up for the challenge. 3. Let me tell you about this sweet 1985 Chevrolet 1500 I found on Facebook Marketplace for $10,000. This is one of those square-body Chevys that's been getting a lot of attention from collectors lately, and I can see why. What's really impressive here is the low mileage, just 45,500 miles, which is incredibly low for a truck of this age. It's rocking a blue-on-blue color combo, and from the seller's description, this thing is about as original as they come. We're talking about a stock 305 motor, which might not be the most powerful engine Chevy offered, but it's known for being reliable and easy to maintain. The seller's being pretty straightforward about what they've got here. An all-original square body with some nice features like working dual tanks, which is actually pretty rare to find both still working, functioning AC and the original AM radio. What's particularly appealing is that there are no drill holes, which means nobody's been adding aftermarket accessories and potentially compromising the body. The interior is reportedly in great shape, which is often a weak point on these trucks. At $10,000, considering the current market for square-body Chevys and the low mileage, this actually seems like a fair asking price. The seller's confidence shows in their no tire kickers or lowballers stance, and they're even open to trading for a Harley Ultra Classic. This could be a solid investment considering how these square bodies have been appreciating lately. Just remember, it's a 38-year-old truck, so while it might be in great shape, it's still going to need the kind of attention any classic vehicle requires. If you're in the market for a clean, original square-body Chevy, this one seems worth checking out, especially with that remarkably low mileage. Just don't go in expecting to negotiate much on the price. 4. Let's talk about this really interesting 1973 Ford F-250 Camper Special. I found on Facebook Marketplace for $15,000. I've got to say, this one caught my attention for all the right reasons. What we're looking at here is a seriously original piece of Ford truck history. With 69,000 miles on the clock, this F-250 is sporting its original white paint and brown interior, which is pretty remarkable for a 50-year-old work truck. The Camper Special package makes this even more desirable. These were beefed up to handle the weight of slide-in campers, making them tougher than your standard F-250. The seller's enthusiasm about the truck's originality seems genuine. We're talking original paint, engine, drivetrain, wheels, and even those classic hubcaps. They've put new tires on it, which is always a good sign that it's been cared for. The 4-speed manual transmission is a huge plus for collectors and enthusiasts who enjoy that classic driving experience. At $15,000, while it might seem steep to some, the market for original, well-preserved trucks from this era has been strong. The fact that it's a Camper Special with original everything and reportedly drives like new adds significant value. These trucks were workhorses, and finding one this original is getting increasingly rare. Just remember, being a 50-year-old vehicle, even in great condition, it'll still need the kind of attention and maintenance any classic requires. But if you're looking for a genuine piece of Ford truck history that you can actually drive and enjoy, this could be a solid investment. The clean title and multiple documented owners suggest this truck has a story to tell. For the right collector or enthusiast who appreciates originality, this F-250 Camper Special could be a really special find. 5. Let me tell you about this interesting 1983 Ford F-250 I found on Facebook Marketplace for $10,000. This one's got a pretty cool story that makes it stand out from your typical old Ford truck. What we're looking at here is essentially a two-owner vehicle. The current seller bought it from the original owner who purchased it new in 1983. That's pretty rare for a 40-year-old truck. It's powered by the robust 351 Windsor V8, which is one of Ford's more reliable engines from this era, and it's a 2WD setup. The tan-on-tan color combo might not be the most exciting, but here's what's really impressive. The seller has all the original paperwork and receipts from day one. That kind of documentation is gold for collectors and really helps verify the truck's history. They've done some meaningful upgrades. There's a new 4-barrel Holley carburetor, which should help with performance, and fresh tires all around. The seller is honest about the truck's one flaw, some rust in the driver's side door jamb, which is actually pretty minimal for a truck of this age. At $10,000, considering today's market for clean, well-documented classic trucks, this could be a fair deal. You're getting a truck that's been well-maintained, has known history from new, and reportedly runs and drives great with no issues. The 351 Windsor is also a desirable engine that's easy to work on and has great parts availability. Just remember, while it's in great shape, it's still a 40-year-old truck, so expect to do regular maintenance to keep it running well. But with all the documentation and its solid condition, this could be a great choice for someone who appreciates original, well-preserved trucks from this era. 6. Let me tell you about this 1985 Chevrolet 1500 I found on Facebook Marketplace for $6,500. This one's got an interesting story that deserves your attention. First off, while the truck shows 64,214 miles on the odometer, what's really important here is that it's sporting a fresh rebuilt 350 engine with only about 1,500 miles on it. Not only that, but the transmission is also recently rebuilt with just 300 miles of use. That's a huge plus because you're essentially getting new running gear in a classic body. The truck comes in a brown exterior with a burgundy interior, a pretty typical color combo for these mid-80s Chevys. Being a one-owner vehicle is definitely a positive point, as it usually means more consistent maintenance history. Now, let's be real here. The seller's description is pretty brief, which leaves some questions unanswered about the overall condition of the body, interior, and other mechanical components. While they confirm it runs and drives, you'd want to inspect things like the suspension, brakes, and body condition, especially considering its age. At $6,500, considering the fresh engine and transmission rebuild, this could be a decent deal if everything else checks out. These square-body Chevys are getting more popular, and finding one with fresh mechanicals isn't common. Just remember to do your due diligence on the rest of the truck's condition, since it wasn't mentioned in the description. This could be a solid buy for someone looking for a classic Chevy with updated mechanicals, but I definitely recommend a thorough inspection before pulling the trigger. 7. Let me tell you about this 1966 Chevrolet C10 I found on Facebook Marketplace for $7,500, and I'm going to be completely straight with you about what we're looking at here. This is what I'd call an honest old work truck. The seller's being refreshingly upfront about its condition. It's wearing an orange paint job with a black interior and has clocked about 100,000 miles. But here's the real story. This isn't trying to be something it's not. The seller straight up tells us it's not a show truck, and they're being transparent about its flaws. We're looking at a truck with some battle scars. There's rust, patchwork, and dents from its life as a shop truck. But here's the good news. It runs and shifts great, which is really what matters in a classic work truck. It's worth noting it has manual brakes, so if you're used to power brakes, this will definitely feel different. At $7,500, you're getting a piece of classic Americana that's still doing what it was built to do: work. These 66 C10s are becoming increasingly popular for restoration projects, and finding one that's mechanically sound is half the battle. Sure, it needs some cosmetic love, but that's reflected in the price. This could be a great starting point for someone who wants to gradually restore a classic C10 while still being able to use it, or for someone who appreciates a truck with some honest patina and working-class history. Just don't expect to win any car show trophies without putting in some serious work first. 8. Let me tell you about this 1978 Ford Bronco I found on Facebook Marketplace for $13,000. I appreciate how honest the seller is being about this classic SUV, so let's break it down. First off, this Bronco shows 55,221 miles and comes in black. The seller's right. Finding these in decent shape is getting harder every year. What's really interesting is the amount of recent work done. There's a freshly rebuilt C6 transmission with a new converter, new carpet, a complete brake system overhaul, including master cylinder, booster, lines, pads, and calipers, new front wheel bearings, and a new dash pad. That's a significant investment in maintaining this classic. However, let's be real about the issues, and kudos to the seller for being upfront about them. The carburetor needs tuning as it has idle issues. There's a transmission fluid leak from the pan drain bolt, which should be a relatively simple fix, and the steering column is worn, making the gear shifts a bit loose. There's also some rust inside the driver's door, and in what the seller calls the usual spots, though they claim the body is generally straight with only a couple of dents. At $13,000 or best offer, considering the current market for classic Broncos and all the recent mechanical work, this could be a decent deal for someone willing to address the remaining issues. The included rear seat in good condition is a nice bonus, as these often go missing over the years. This Bronco seems like it could be a solid project that's already had some major work done, but still needs some attention to be perfect. It's interesting that they're open to trading for a manual sports car, which might create an opportunity for the right buyer. Just remember, while it's not perfect, these first-gen Broncos are becoming increasingly collectible, and finding one with this much recent mechanical work is pretty uncommon. 9. Let me tell you about this 1985 GMC Suburban 1500 I found on Facebook Marketplace for $4,000. Let's break down what we're looking at here. This is a one-owner square-body Suburban with 80,000 miles on the clock, sporting a gray exterior and brown interior combo. Pretty typical for these 80s GMCs. What makes this one interesting is it's packing a 350 4-bolt main engine, which is known for being one of the more robust versions of the small-block Chevy V8, and it's sitting on a 6-inch lift, giving it some serious presence. The seller's description is pretty brief, which honestly leaves a lot of questions unanswered. While they say it runs great, they seem eager to move it quickly, mentioning they just want to get rid of it. That's something to consider. Sometimes quick sales can mean good deals, but it's always worth asking why. At $4,000, considering it's a Vorwerk 4 with the desirable 4-bolt main 3i50 and a lift kit, the price seems pretty reasonable in today's market. These square-body Suburbans are gaining popularity, especially 4x4 models. The one-owner history is definitely a plus, as these vehicles often changed hands multiple times. Just remember, it's a 38-year-old SUV with a lift kit, so you'll want to check all the usual wear points, suspension components, transfer case, transmission, and look for any rust issues typical of these models. The seller's open to trades, which might create some interesting opportunities for the right buyer. This could be a solid deal for someone looking for a classic 4x4 Suburban with some attitude, especially if everything checks out mechanically. Just make sure to give it a thorough inspection before pulling the trigger. 10. Let me tell you about this 1982 Ford F-150 I found on Facebook Marketplace for $9,000. Though I've got to be honest, there's not much to go on here. What we know is pretty basic. It's a turquoise F-150 with 100,000 miles on the clock, an automatic transmission, and a clean title. The seller claims it has no significant damage or problems, but their description is incredibly brief. Just text me for more info, which honestly isn't very helpful for potential buyers. The turquoise color is pretty eye-catching and somewhat unusual for these trucks, which could make it stand out. At 100,000 miles, that's actually reasonable for a 41-year-old truck, assuming the odometer reading is accurate. At $9,000, I'd really want to know a lot more before making any judgments about the value. Important details like the engine type, maintenance history, interior condition, and whether it's 2WD or 4WD are all missing. These early 80s F-150s can be solid trucks when well maintained, but without more information, it's hard to say if this is a good deal or not. If you're interested in this truck, you'll definitely want to text the seller for those crucial missing details and get a thorough inspection before considering that $9,000 price tag. Remember, when a listing is this brief, it's extra important to do your due diligence. 11. Let me tell you about this 1980 Chevrolet Suburban I found on Facebook Marketplace for $2,500, and I'm going to be completely honest about what we're dealing with here. This is definitely a project vehicle, folks. While it's got some desirable features, like that massive 454 big block engine, sturdy Teach 400 transmission, and the Silverado package, this Suburban needs some serious work. The seller is refreshingly honest about its condition, which I really appreciate. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. There's no title. That's a major red flag and could be a real headache depending on your state's laws. Currently, it's running on a remote fuel jug because the fuel system needs work. That's not exactly ideal for daily driving. The seller's also upfront about needing exhaust work, new tires, and brake work just to make it roadworthy. On the positive side, it's a 3/4-ton C20 model with the desirable 3.21 gear ratio in the 14-bolt rear end, and it shows 84,000 miles on the clock. The silver exterior with blue interior is a classic combo, and being a Silverado package means it came well equipped from the factory. At $2,500, you're basically buying a project that needs everything safety-related replaced or repaired, plus dealing with title issues. This could be a good starting point for someone who wants to restore one of these classic Suburbans and has the skills and patience to deal with both mechanical work and paperwork challenges. The 4.5 T400 combination is highly sought after, so there's potential here. Just remember, this isn't a jump in and drive home situation. You're looking at significant investment in parts and labor beyond the purchase price, plus the hassle of sorting out the title situation. If you're up for the challenge, it could be an interesting project, but go into it with your eyes wide open. 12. Let me dive deeper into this 1967 Chevy C10 that's caught our attention. You know, these classic C10s have become increasingly popular in recent years, and there's a good reason for that. This particular truck in Ferris, Texas, represents what many people are looking for in a vintage pickup. It's got that beautiful blend of simplicity and character that you just can't find in modern vehicles. Let's talk about what makes this one special. The original inline-six engine is actually a huge plus here. While many people swapped these out for V8s over the years, having the original straight six is becoming more desirable among collectors. These engines were basically bulletproof. They're known for their reliability and torque, perfect for a pickup truck. The 4-speed manual transmission makes this an engaging drive. You really feel connected to the vehicle, which is what classic car ownership is all about. The blue exterior with white interior combination is classic Americana, and the fact that there's no rust mentioned is crucial. These old Chevys were notorious for rust issues, especially in the cab corners, rocker panels, and bed, so a rust-free example is something to get excited about. With 80,000 miles, it's been used enough to stay healthy but not abused. These engines can go well over 200,000 miles when properly maintained. Having only 2 previous owners is another positive sign. It suggests the truck hasn't been passed around and potentially modified by multiple owners. The clean title and lack of significant damage or problems add to its appeal. At $10,000 with the or best offer option, there might be some room for negotiation. However, let's be realistic. This is a 56-year-old vehicle. Even in good condition, you should expect some quirks and regular maintenance. The electrical system might need attention, the suspension bushings might be worn, and there could be some minor issues that come with age. But that's part of the classic car experience. For someone looking to get into classic trucks, this could be a solid entry point. It's not a show queen that you'd be afraid to drive, but rather an honest, functional piece of automotive history that you can actually use and enjoy while potentially increasing in value over time. Just make sure to do a thorough inspection, check all the numbers, and maybe bring along someone who knows these trucks well before making your decision. 13. We're taking a closer look at a 1985 Chevrolet 2500 that's currently up for sale. The seller is asking $12,500 for this classic square-body Chevy, and from what I can see, it looks like a pretty solid deal. Now, let's dive into the details. This 85 Chevy is powered by a built 427 big block engine, which should provide plenty of power for whatever you need to do. It's also got a 4-inch rough country lift kit, giving it a nice, aggressive stance. The seller has also upgraded the carburetor to a Holley 750 and installed a performance starter for reliable starting. The exterior of the truck is finished in black, and it's sitting on brand new 35-inch tires, which look great and should provide excellent traction. The interior is also black, and while the original seats are currently out of the truck, the seller does have seats from an '05 Chevy pickup that they plan on installing. One thing to note is that there is still money owed on this vehicle, so you'll want to factor that into your decision if you're interested in buying it. However, the seller does have a clean title for the truck. According to the seller, this Chevy has been driven just 10,000 miles, which is pretty low for a vehicle of this age. It's also got a manual transmission, which is great for those who enjoy a more engaging driving experience. The seller also mentions that the vehicle has no significant damage or problems, which is always a good sign. However, as with any used vehicle purchase, it's always a good idea to have it inspected by a trusted mechanic before making a final decision. Overall, this 1985 Chevrolet 2500 looks like a great truck for someone who wants a classic square body with some modern upgrades. The asking price of $12,500 seems fair for a vehicle in this condition with these modifications. If you're in the market for a truck like this, it's definitely worth checking out. As always, be sure to do your due diligence and ask plenty of questions before making a purchase. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. 14. We've got a 1977 Ford F-150 that's currently up for sale. The seller is asking $3,800 for this classic truck, and there are a few things you should know before considering it. First off, this F-150 has been driven for 100,000 miles, which is not unusual for a vehicle of this age. It's equipped with an automatic transmission, making it easy to drive for just about anyone. The exterior is finished in a bright yellow color, while the interior is black. Now, here's where things get a bit interesting. According to the seller, this truck arrived from Mexico on foot and has papers in order from Mexico. as well as a title from Texas. It's not entirely clear what "on foot" means in this context, but it could suggest that the truck has had a rather unconventional journey. The seller does mention that the truck works well, which is a good sign. However, it's important to keep in mind that a vehicle of this age is likely to have some issues, even if they're not immediately apparent. It's always a good idea to have a trusted mechanic inspect any used vehicle before making a purchase. One positive aspect of this listing is that the vehicle is paid off and has had only one owner. This could indicate that it's been well cared for over the years. Overall, while the 1977 Ford F-150 could be a fun project truck for the right buyer, it's important to approach this listing with a bit of caution. The unusual history of the vehicle and its age could suggest potential issues down the line. However, if you're willing to put in the work and have the truck thoroughly inspected, it could be a great deal at $3,800. As always, be sure to ask plenty of questions and gather as much information as possible before making a decision. 15. We've got a real treat for you, a 1981 Ford Courier that's currently up for sale. The seller is asking $9,900 for this classic pickup truck, and from what I can see, it looks like it could be worth every penny. First off, let's talk about the condition of this Courier. According to the seller, it's been fully frame-off restored by the previous owner, and it shows. The black exterior paint looks absolutely stunning, and the seller mentions that there's zero rust on the truck. That's a huge plus for any vehicle of this age. Inside, the red interior looks equally impressive. The seller notes that everything works on the truck, with the exception of the stereo, which could just be user error. It's clear that a lot of love and attention to detail has gone into restoring this Courier. Under the hood, you'll find a gasoline engine paired with a manual transmission. This combination should make for a fun and engaging driving experience, especially for those who enjoy a more hands-on approach. One of the most compelling aspects of this listing is the truck's history. The seller purchased it from the original owner, who unfortunately passed away. It's clear that this Courier was his pride and joy, and the seller has stacks of paperwork and invoices that will come with the truck to prove it. It's always nice to have a vehicle with a well-documented history like this. The seller also mentions that the truck has won a couple of trophies, which is a testament to its quality and condition. These trophies will be included with the sale, making for a nice bonus. Overall, this 1981 Ford Courier looks like an absolute gem. It's been meticulously restored, has a clean title, and comes with a great backstory. The seller notes that it would make a great weekend cruiser, and I couldn't agree more. If you're in the market for a classic pickup truck that's sure to turn heads, this Courier is definitely worth checking out. 16. We're taking a look at a 1972 Chevrolet 1500 that's currently up for sale. The seller is asking $3,800 for this classic pickup truck, and while it does need some work, it could be a great project for the right buyer. Let's start with the basics. This 72 Chevy has an automatic transmission, which should make it easy to drive for most people. The exterior is finished in a brown color, while the interior is white. It's powered by a gasoline engine, which the seller notes runs well and doesn't smoke. That's always a good sign for a vehicle of this age. According to the seller, the oil pressure is good, and the transmission shifts properly. These are two important factors to consider when buying an older vehicle, as they can be expensive to fix if there are issues. Now, here's where things get a bit more interesting. The seller does admit that the truck needs some work, although they don't go into specifics about what exactly needs to be done. This is where you'll want to ask plenty of questions and potentially have a mechanic take a look at the truck before making a purchase. On the plus side, the seller has a clean title in hand and in their name, which is always a good thing. The truck has also had only 2 owners, which could indicate that it's been relatively well cared for over the years. One unique aspect of this listing is that the seller is open to trades. If you've got something you'd like to trade for this Chevy, be sure to send them some pics of your offer. Overall, while this 1972 Chevrolet 1500 does need some work, it could be a great project truck for someone who's willing to put in the time and effort. The asking price of $3,800 seems reasonable for a vehicle of this age and condition, especially if the engine and transmission are in good shape. As always, Be sure to do your due diligence before making a purchase. Ask plenty of questions, have the truck inspected by a trusted mechanic, and make sure you're comfortable with any potential issues that may need to be addressed. 17. We've got a 1984 Chevrolet 1500 that's currently up for sale. The seller is asking $10,000 for this classic pickup truck, and while it does have some potential, there are a few things to keep in mind. First off, let's talk about the good stuff. This 84 Chevy has a newly rebuilt 350 motor, which is a definite plus. A rebuilt engine can provide peace of mind and potentially save you money down the line. The seller also notes that the truck rides well, which is always a good sign. Now, let's move on to the areas that need some attention. According to the seller, the interior needs some TLC. This could mean anything from minor cosmetic issues to more significant problems, so you'll want to get a good look at the interior before making a decision. The seller also mentions that the truck is perfect for a project because it does need some work. While they don't go into specifics about what exactly needs to be done, this is something to keep in mind. A project truck can be a great way to get a classic vehicle at a lower price point, but it's important to have a realistic idea of what you're getting into. Aesthetically, the truck has a tan exterior and a beige interior. It's powered by a gasoline engine and has an automatic transmission, which should make it relatively easy to drive. One thing to note is that the seller doesn't mention anything about the truck's title status or ownership history. These are important factors to consider when buying any used vehicle, so be sure to ask about them before making a purchase. Overall, while this 1984 Chevrolet 1500 does need some work, it could be a great project truck for the right buyer. The newly rebuilt engine is a definite plus, but the interior and other potential issues are something to keep in mind. The asking price of $10,000 seems a bit high for a truck that needs work, but if you're willing to put in the time and effort, it could be a fun and rewarding project. As always, be sure to ask plenty of questions, get a thorough inspection, and have a clear idea of what you're getting into before making a purchase. If you're in the Lufkin, Texas area and are in the market for a project truck, this 84 Chevy could be worth checking out. 18. We're taking a closer look at a 1976 Ford F-150 that's currently up for sale. The seller is asking $3,000 for this classic pickup truck, and while it does have some potential, there are a few important things to consider. First off, let's talk about the basics. This 76 Ford has been driven for 101,001 miles, which is not unusual for a vehicle of this age. It's equipped with an automatic transmission and has a V8 engine that the seller notes is functioning perfectly. The exterior is finished in a red color, and the interior is also red. Now, here's where things get a bit more complicated. The seller mentions that this truck is a project and needs work. Specifically, they note that the brakes are bad and that the truck needs to be towed. This is definitely something to keep in mind, as brake issues can be serious and potentially expensive to fix. On the plus side, the seller does state that the engine and transmission are working perfectly, which is a good sign. They also mention that the vehicle has no significant damage or problems, aside from the brake issues. The seller has a clean title for the truck, and it's been paid off. It's also had only 2 owners, which could indicate that it's been relatively well cared for over the years. One unique aspect of this listing is that the seller is open to trading the truck for a Honda Goldwing motorcycle of equal value. If you happen to have one lying around, it could be an interesting option to consider. Overall, while this 1976 Ford F-150 does need some work, particularly with the brakes, it could be a great project truck for someone who's willing to put in the time and effort. The asking price of $3,000 seems reasonable for a vehicle in this condition, especially if the engine and transmission are indeed in good shape. As always, be sure to ask plenty of questions and have the truck thoroughly inspected before making a purchase. Brake issues can be serious, so you'll want to have a clear idea of what needs to be done and how much it will cost. If you're in the Odessa area and are in the market for a project truck, this 76 Ford could be worth checking out. Just be prepared to invest some time and money into getting it back on the road. 19. We've got a 1983 Chevy El Camino that's currently up for sale. The seller is asking $9,000 for this classic ride, and from what I can see, it looks like it could be a solid investment. First off, let's talk about the mileage. According to the seller, this El Camino has only been driven for 5,000 miles. That's incredibly low for a vehicle that's nearly 40 years old, and it could indicate that it's been very well cared for over the years. The El Camino is equipped with an automatic transmission, which should make it easy to drive for just about anyone. It's powered by a gasoline engine, and the seller notes that the vehicle has no significant damage or problems. That's always a good sign when you're looking at a classic car. Aesthetically, this El Camino has a red exterior and a black interior. The color combination is classic and should appeal to a wide range of buyers. The seller also mentions that the vehicle is paid off and has a clean title. This is important, as it means you won't have to deal with any outstanding loans or title issues if you decide to purchase the car. Now, here's where things get a bit vague. The seller's description simply states, "Good car overall." While this is a positive sentiment, it doesn't give us a lot of detail about the specific condition of the vehicle. It would be nice to have more information about any potential issues or areas that may need attention. That being said, based on the low mileage and the seller's assertion that the vehicle has no significant damage or problems, this El Camino could be a great find. It's always a good idea to have a trusted mechanic inspect any used vehicle before making a purchase, but if everything checks out, this could be a fun and reliable classic car. The asking price of $9,000 seems reasonable for an El Camino in this condition with such low mileage. These vehicles have a dedicated following, and well-maintained examples can command a premium price. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic Chevy El Camino, this 1983 model is definitely worth checking out. Just be sure to ask plenty of questions and gather as much information as possible before making a decision. 20. We're taking a closer look at a 1985 GMC Jimmy that's currently up for sale. The seller is asking $8,000 for this classic SUV, but they're mainly interested in trading it for a bagged full-size vehicle. Let's dive into the details. First off, this Jimmy has been driven for 120,000 miles, which is not unusual for a vehicle of this age. It's equipped with an automatic transmission, making it easy to drive for most people. The exterior is finished in a blue color, while the interior is black. Now here's where things get interesting. The seller mentions that they removed the original 2.8-liter engine and replaced it with a freshly rebuilt 355 cubic inch engine. This is a significant upgrade that should provide plenty of power for this Jimmy. The seller notes that everything inside the engine is new, including the cam and roller rockers. However, there are a couple of potential issues to keep in mind. The seller mentions that the carburetor is acting up, which is why they haven't driven the vehicle down the road since installing the new engine. They've only put idle time on it and loaded it onto a trailer. This is something to consider, as carb issues can be frustrating and may require additional work to sort out. The seller also doesn't provide any information about the condition of the rest of the vehicle. While the engine may be freshly rebuilt, we don't know anything about the state of the transmission, suspension, or other key components. This is where you'll want to ask plenty of questions and potentially have a mechanic take a look at the Jimmy before making a decision. On the plus side, the vehicle is paid off, so you won't have to worry about any outstanding loans or financing issues. Overall, while this 1985 GMC Jimmy does have a freshly rebuilt engine, the carburetor issues and lack of information about the rest of the vehicle make it a bit of a gamble at the asking price of $8,000. If you're primarily interested in trading for a bagged full-size vehicle, it could be worth pursuing further. But if you're looking to buy the Jimmy outright, you'll want to gather as much information as possible and have a clear idea of what you're getting into. As always, be sure to ask plenty of questions, get a thorough inspection, and weigh the potential risks and rewards before making a decision.